Another weekend of SEC baseball is officially in the books, and there is a new number one team in the country. Guys, I'm Chris Phillips. He's Harrison Fant. We are back here on the windup talking all things that happened this weekend. Before we get going, guys, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon as well so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content, which is each and every single day. Also, guys, check out the podcast, which drops daily on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can also find us on all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. I'm joined by my co-host, like I mentioned, Harrison Fant. Harrison, what's going on, my friend? Obviously, you've got the Masters pull-up, or the quarter zip on, if you will. We did not have the wind-up last week. You and I both were busy at the Masters. It's great to be back in the saddle yet again as things are really starting to heat up on the diamond of the SEC. Harrison, believe it or not, we are halfway through conference play. So at this point, we're really starting. Things are taking shape. We kind of are figuring out who these ball clubs are. It's crazy to think how quickly time flies. In about a month or so, you and I will be talking about and previewing the SEC tournament in Hoover. Harrison, what's going on, my friend? Great to chat with you once again.
Chris, great to be here. Great to be back. Masters was incredible. Worked over 100 hours there. We tried to link up, didn't unfortunately work with no cell phones, but unbelievable experience. And, nowhere I'd rather be back if I'm not at the Masters than watching and covering and breaking all down college baseball and SEC baseball for sure. So glad to be here, Chris.
Yeah, Harrison, I was going to say, I feel like those tuned in would give us and will give us a pass for last week because, again, you were working the Masters. I get a call late Sunday night. Hey, got a family friend. They got a ticket for tomorrow to the Masters. Do you want it? And so everybody tuned in, you guys know, you get that call, you drop whatever it is you're doing, and you go because getting one of those tickets is harder than finding a golden ticket in Willy Wonka. I mean, it's like that level of coveted.
It's the hardest ticket in sports to get.
Hardest ticket in sports, unless you are going to literally pay your month's mortgage or your month's rent to get one, which most people, including me, are not willing to do.
Yeah,
that being said, Harrison, let's dive into everything because, like I mentioned, we got a lot to discuss. And I want to start, okay? We got a lot of series, a lot of baseball to talk about, but I want to start in College Station because you might recall, Harrison, and many of the others tuning in, you might recall it was about a month and a half or so ago, give or take, the beginning of SEC play. I went as far as to potentially claim that maybe, just maybe, Texas A&M was a team that was overrated after their SEC opening series loss to Florida. Folks, that's no longer the case. It's not even remotely the case. After Texas A&M, a clean 3-0 sweep of the Vanderbilt Commodores, and you look at the Aggies right now, 32-4, 11-4 in conference. This team has not lost a non-conference game, and the Texas A&M Aggies are your new number one team in college baseball, according to all of the polls. Again, they beat Vandy by scores of 15-0, 9-0, and 12-6. You talk about domination. What is that, 36-6. They outscored the Vanderbilt Commodores, and we'll talk Vandy more so in a second because I think it's also noteworthy what Vandy's doing right now. But, Harrison, your thoughts on Texas A&M being the new number one team in college baseball? Of course, Arkansas, which we're going to get to in a second, they dropped 2 of 3 over the weekend. A&M gets a sweep. It vaults them up. Just talk a little bit about this Aggies ball club. Well-deserved, I imagine you would agree.
Yeah, Chris, and this Aggies ball club is stacked from top to bottom, both on the offensive and defensive side, pitching as well. And you could have made a case weeks ago for them to be the number one team in the country. And I would have had no disagreement at all. I don't think a lot of people would have. And it's now revealed that they're the number one team in the country, and rightfully so, after 2 incredible shutouts against a really good Vanderbilt team that, I mean, the offense is just lethal up and down the line. It starts with Jace Lavalette, Brady Montgomery, just leading up the offense with the power they have, the speed they have in the bases, and the defensive ability. It's unbelievable. And then the pitching side, which we've talked about plenty of times, behind Ryan Prager. Those are 7-inning complete game. A complete game is a complete game as a pitcher. You will take that. 10 Ks, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, and just unbelievable. In game 2, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, they hit. Vanderbilt has really good starting pitching. I talked about it in my midseason SEC pitching rankings. They have 2 of the top 10 pitchers, and I believe in the SEC, and Bryce Cunningham and Carter Holton. And they mashed both of them. I mean, 7 runs off of Bryce Cunningham, 4 innings, 9 hits. Carter Holton, he didn't even go 4 innings. He gave 6 runs, 6 earned runs, 7 runs total on 5 hits, and just it was crazy. I mean, in game 3, same thing. Grayson Carter, he only lasted 3 innings, only gave 2 hits and 2 runs though, but just shows the depth and the power and the consistency that this A&M team has.
And I was just sitting here thinking, Harrison, I don't think probably the most valuable assistant added over the offseason was pitching coach Max Weiner for Texas A&M. Like when you look at what he has done with that A&M pitching staff, and you think about what they were last year, A&M this year, Harrison, ranks second in ERA, 3.06. They're only behind the Arkansas Razorbacks, who most people will say, and most folks will agree, has the best pitching staff, at least the weekend rotation, the best pitching staff in all of college baseball. And so, I expected Texas A&M to hit Jace Lavalette, Braden Montgomery. That's a great place to start. You got Targach as well, amongst a host of others. But what they're doing on the mound, Harrison, I think is what's most impressive. Again, you mentioned Prager, Tanner Jones, electric over the weekend, Justin Lampkin. I mean, they're as good as anybody on the bump. And again, that should play really well for them as they continue, not just through SEC play, but we start talking postseason. A&M's got that key piece they didn't have a year ago, which is on the mound.
Yeah, Chris, and Max Weiner just did a fantastic job with his staff flipping around for, I believe they were ranked like 8th or 10th in the nation in ERA last year. And it's been night and day for them. And shout out Max Weiner for the follow on social. It's just, I mean, I can't complain. I mean, he's done a great job of the program, and it's shown throughout the course of the SEC season against SEC caliber bats and lineups.
Now, Harrison, we mentioned this is the halfway point of SEC play upcoming for A&M at Bama. That'll be a fun one this weekend. They just took down Arkansas 2-3. Georgia at home, at LSU, at Ole Miss. There's some really tricky road series. But the final weekend, the Arkansas Razorbacks come to College Station. That very well could be a series with the SEC West title, and maybe more importantly, the SEC title could be on the line when Arkansas comes to town. On the flip side, Harrison, really quickly, I know you speak really highly of Vandy. I was someone that doubted this team. Are they not one of the most inconsistent ball clubs in the SEC, though? It feels like to me at this point they're either sweeping or getting swept. I don't know what it is, but really tough weekend with the Commodores. They sit now 26-10 overall. They're still 8-7 in conference play, so they're in a good position. I mean, Harrison, they're 8-7 in conference play, and they've been swept twice. So, we talk about all the time why it's so important to not get swept. And you think about where they'd be had they just salvaged a game in either series that they dropped all 3. But your thoughts on Vanderbilt right now? It's just very much a mixed bag when it comes to Corbin's club.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's, like you said, they go on the road as a top 5 team into Founders Park in South Carolina, get swept there. And then, they'll sweep another weekend. And then a sweep at A&M, I think we have to take a step back. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's now the number 1 team in the country. But if that happened at home, a little bit more. But like we say, you got to win one on the road, and you win the series. Try to hope for the sweep at home. But yeah, it really is a mixed bag. And I mean, they've had the second most quality starts in the SEC at 11. And I mean, it's tough to gauge who they're going to be each weekend. And that's not what you want midway through the season at this point, let alone going into postseason. So it's going to be interesting. I think they're going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch in the SEC going down the stretch and into the SEC tournament. Because remember that year they went into the SEC tournament kind of middle, upper third of the pack in the SEC, and then go on a huge run and win the SEC tournament in Hoover.
And Harrison, something to keep an eye on when it comes to Vanderbilt, especially as we get closer to the postseason and into the postseason. Vandy, they are 2-7 on the road this year. They are 20-3 at home. 4-0 in neutral site games, by the way. So when they are away from their home field and not a neutral site, they're at somebody else's ballpark. They are 2-7 on the road. I know it's tough to win on the road, but if you keep falling on the road, you're probably going to have to go on the road for the postseason. So if you're Vandy, you want to try to secure a hosting spot because they have been so much better at Hawkins Field this season. Let's go, Harrison, to Tuscaloosa. Arguably the most notable series of the weekend. Again, we wanted to start with Texas A&M because I wanted to give A&M their roses, show some love to gig them. But probably the biggest stunner of the weekend, Alabama takes 2 of 3 for the Arkansas Razorbacks. They win game 1 5-3. Or excuse me, Arkansas wins game 1 5-3. They lose game 2 4-3, lose game 3 5-0. Bama winning the series 2-1. Hagen Smith, he was fantastic yet again. And Ben Hess gets roughed up for Bama. The pitching was fantastic all weekend long. But what does it show you? Let me ask you this, Harrison. Do you feel like you learned more about Arkansas or Alabama from this weekend? Because Bama's been another one, right? Very much mixed bag, high expectations, high hopes. They're 6-9 in conference play. But this feels like one that can provide a jolt for their season. Do you take away more from the Bama side of things or the Arkansas side of things when you look at this past weekend?
Yeah, Chris, no, great question. And I think you have to take more away from the Bama side of things. It's a more impressive weekend for Bama. I think, yeah, off the top, that's easy to say, they beat the previous number 1 team in the country, but you do it at home. So Arkansas, we talk about how hard the SEC is and how you don't go in and win every single week in the SEC. So they were bound to drop 1 series minimum. And at Alabama is not a terrible series. They salvaged 1 game. Well, not salvaged 1 game, but won the first one. You lose the series, though. You win the game on the road, which we talk about doing. You have to do that in the SEC. But I think it's more about what we learned from Alabama. And, another rough start for Ben Hess. 5 innings, 5 earned, 8 K. He has a lot of strikeouts, but he still gives up hits and just a lot of powerful hits and at-bats. But the way they bounce back and just the bats for Alabama really stepped up this week, and I was really impressed with that. Obviously, it's led by Gage Miller and TJ McCants. Gage Miller, one of the top 10, I think, hitters in the SEC statistically. He's top 5 in RBIs, top 8 in slugging, top 5 in OPS. And Arkansas has really struggled on the mound, giving up a lot of home runs, which is an interesting thing if you look at it with how dominant their pitching is, their starting rotation. They've given up the second least home runs in the SEC, but they gave up a bunch this series. And so I think we definitely learned a lot more from Alabama.
And how about Zane Adams for Alabama on Sunday? 8 innings pitched, 4 hits, no earned, 5 strikeouts. He was fantastic. And gave them the start they needed to get that job done and get the series win. And it just goes to show again, Harrison, what can happen when you go on the road to the SEC. I would agree with you. It's no reason for concern for Arkansas, but heck, man, I was kind of convinced. I wasn't sure this Hogs team was going to drop an SEC series at any point. And so for Bama to do that, like you mentioned, I think it more so Arkansas is going to be fine. But for what this can do for Alabama, getting them going again, they're chasing the postseason as well, sitting at 6-9 in conference play. Huge shot in the arm for the Alabama Crimson Tide and Rob Vaughn's ball club.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
To touch more on Zane Adams, do that in a rubber match on Sunday in the SEC against a number 1 team in the country in Arkansas, that's insane. Talk about the guts, the outing you have, just the confidence on the mound you have. And the confidence you give your team around you going 8 shutout innings against Arkansas, who obviously we know doesn't have the best lineup in the SEC, but is a good lineup in the SEC. His curveball, he threw at the highest rate this season that he had, and it was filthy. He threw it 36% of the time, had a 29% chase rate, his 3rd highest this season. And so that is exactly what you look for in a Sunday starter. And he was the headline of why they ended up winning that series, I believe.
Harrison, let's go to Rocky Top, Tennessee, where the Volunteers sweep LSU. Final scores of 6-3, 3-1, 8-4. We are far past the point of panic with the LSU Tigers, right? This is a team, guys, if the SEC tournament in Hoover started today, LSU, the defending national champions, they would not be there because the top 12 of 14 go. LSU 3-12 in the conference right now. They are 22-15 overall. I want to give praise to Tennessee, and we're going to do that, Harrison. But let's first start with the LSU Tigers. How shocked are you at what they are right now? Because I think the last time you and I spoke was a couple weeks ago, and you said, hey, I'm not hitting the panic button. They're going to be fine. They are far from fine. LSU is far from fine. And I don't know, by the way, Harrison, what it is in the SEC if these fan bases are like, if they're selling their souls to win national championships, because we've seen this the last couple of years, right, with Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Now it's LSU's turn to go from winning a national title to go in the shitter. So, LSU, panic. It is time to panic on LSU.
Yeah, Chris, It's tough to have confidence in them, but if they, I mean, they have so much talent in their lineup on every aspect of the game. Pitching on the mound.
Best case
Coleman.
scenario, sneak into the postseason as a 3 seed. Best case.
I mean, I don't believe that won't happen. I can see that easily happening. And imagine having LSU as your 3 seed in your regional. That just is awful. That's the last thing you want to see, like an LSU or a Florida as a 3 seed in your regional. I mean, the thing is, LSU has way too much talent on the team, and the coaching staff to be in this position. And no one really expected him to be in this position whatsoever, like at all. But I mean, they could get on a hot streak, make it as a 3 seed, kind of like an Ole Miss did when they won their College World Series. They were the last 4 teams in. Don't be surprised if that happens. But I mean, there's definitely a lot of panic around LSU baseball, especially with the tradition, history, and just that the program is and the prestige that it is.
It's hard to believe. I mean, really, like when you look at the talent, let me just say this, the LSU folks tuning in, it's inexcusable how bad LSU is this year. And you look at the names on that roster but the big thing is this, the LSU folks I talked to in preseason wasn't a talent thing. They lost big time leadership from last year's squad, right? It goes so far beyond Paul Skeens, Dylan Cruz. They lost Beloso, who was a leader for them. They lost a couple of homegrown local guys. And I mean, Harrison, I don't think they've replaced those guys. They lost Trey Morgan. They lost these key cornerstone pieces that, this, Harrison, you can have talent. You can also have a very fragmented team. And I mean, to this point, that's what it looks like for LSU. They've also been dog water on the mound. And I mean, we talked off air. How much did losing Wes Johnson hurt? Didn't help because that pitching staff we're halfway through SEC play. They're lost. They are in the wilderness right now when it comes to on the mound. So on the flip side, give Tennessee their credit. Tennessee was fantastic. It's crazy. Lindsey Nelson Stadium's become a place, Harrison. You go in there, and it's not an easy weekend. It's not. Give Tony Vitello credit. The Vols right now, they're 30-6 overall. They are 25-2 on their home field. They're 25-2, which means they've only played 6 road games, which is crazy to think about. 3 neutral site as well. But 25-2 at home. They're 30-6 overall, 10-5 in SEC play. And I mean, again, Tennessee was my pick to win the SEC East preseason. They sit second right now to the Kentucky Wildcats, who we'll talk about more in just a second. But Tennessee, man, it just looks like a traditional Tennessee ball club under Tony Vitello.
Yeah, and just a fantastic coach. And you said Wes Johnson, losing him for LSU was huge. Tony Vitello just is leading their club in the right direction continuously year after year with his tenure at Tennessee. That environment at Lindsey Nelson, I can't wait to go one day. It looks unbelievable. We've talked about that so many times, and it's, I think, definitely a bucket list, let alone going to every SEC stadium, but a bucket list for sure. Just the atmosphere and just the environment. Like home field advantage. You want to talk about home field advantage? Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Them hosting regional, that will be a huge, huge home field advantage for them. And I mean, that's what you want in the SEC, let alone college baseball. Playing in front of your crowd, your fan base, with your guys and your studs on the mound. I mean, Drew Beam had a fantastic bounce back game. He in game 2, going 6 2/3, 8 hits, no runs, 5 Ks. So that was great to see. I mean, we saw Causey coming out of relief after Chris Stamos started game 1. He looked really good in that and is coming out of relief, which he did to start the season. So maybe that's kind of a thing that continues forward. That's going to be interesting to see. But another team, just like LSU, with a ton of talent up and down the lineup on the mound, but everything's clicking for them, unlike LSU, which everything's not.
I'll ask you today, Harrison, does LSU make the postseason?
I'm going to say yes. I mean, I think they sneak in. Last 4 in, they sneak in as a 3. I mean, you also got to look at the committee. It's LSU. I mean, you really going to try that hard to leave an LSU team out if they're borderline? I mean, we look at
what are we thinking? I mean, do they get anything at 13-17? I think they probably have to win a couple in Hoover if they're 13-17. 14-16, I'd probably give it to you they're in. 14-16 or better, they're in.
I mean, they're going to go into Hoover with a lot to play for compared to some other teams, that are already in maybe, and, make a deep run. I mean, they got at Missouri coming up this week versus Auburn and then versus A&M, which that's not who you want to play at all. But I don't know. I think they sneak in, but Free crisp.
At Missouri is that is the most must-win series of any SEC team this season.
Yeah.
Bro, if LSU drops, we're going to be having a hell of a conversation next week. And
Yeah,
LSU
I mean, that'd be great for
does
the
not win
RPI.
that.
That's huge for the RPI if you go sweep them on the road, But hey, Florida thought the same thing.
Bro, yeah, Mizzou they are not a doormat. They are a tough out,
No,
just
they
like
got
everybody else.
they got two of the top 20 pitchers, but I mean, Tennessee's got a great, interesting kind of similar schedule coming up at Kentucky. Who, wow, that preseason sleeper is looking real good right now, Chris, isn't it?
It is. And with that being said, Harrison, I refuse to go any further without talking about the Kentucky Wildcats. And see, I'm even the fact that it took us this long to get to Kentucky, this really goes to show how important, to a degree, preseason, but more so, I think Kentucky, bro, I didn't even realize they're ranked third. They are third in the country right now. And it's still, we gloss over it because it's oh, yeah, Kentucky.
Basketball school.
And, bro, they are 14-1 in this conference. If this was Arkansas, if this was South Carolina, if this was Florida, LSU, bro, we're spending 3/4 of this show talking about it, but because it's Kentucky, there's still people that look at it and say, well, their schedule must have been soft. There's no way Kentucky can be that good. Folks, Kentucky's that good. They really are. Went to Auburn over the weekend. I know Auburn's not very good. Don't get me wrong. Swept them, though. Beat them 6-5, 9-1, 13-8. Harrison, first off, how shocked are you what we're seeing from Kentucky? And second off, when you look at this Kentucky club right now, what stands out to you? And I mean, they are leading the SEC East right now, my friend. I don't think either of us would have predicted that. When you look at Kentucky, the weekend that was and who they are as a ball club, what stands out to you?
Yeah, Chris. I mean, they've exceeded my expectations this year. I mean, I had them as a sleeper pick going to Omaha potentially and going to Super Regional, I think for sure. I thought they were going to be kind of a 2 seed, but to be number 3 in the country and be at top of the SEC, just the record they have and the statistically how good they've been.
They've already reached 30 wins. They're already.
You got to give them their flowers.
Wins.
You got to give them their flowers. I mean, this isn't Augusta, but you got to give them their flowers. But it's all in the leadership with Nick Mangione, just how the tone he sets, the players that they've brought in, the transfers that they've had come in, and like I mentioned, and I wrote about in an article about their scheduling and their non-conference scheduling, and they've really stepped up to every single challenge and just delivered the result you want out of, what their expectations were coming this season. I mean, they've been fantastic the past 2 years. A really great deep postseason run last year. But, I mean, the biggest thing for me with Kentucky, they're just a sound team overall, but a fantastic defense. They're going to grind out every at-bat. They're going to make you earn every single run you get. I mean, they're 4th in the SEC in runs per game. I mean, it's unbelievable how just sound they are, and just that's kind of their forte. Is just they're not gonna be Arkansas Friday, Saturday, Sunday elite starters on the mound. They're not gonna be just A&M's or Tennessee just mashing up and down the lineup, but they're just play sound baseball and they're gonna grind out games, and it's fun to watch. I mean, I think it's great for the SEC. It's great for college baseball.
Put some respect on Kentucky. I know they're ranked 3rd in the country, but still, I think you poll SEC baseball fans right now, and many folks who they're tuned into baseball, but let's be honest, spring football is happening, right? We got basketball stuff that's still happening with John Calipari and the transfer portal. And so, folks are kind of keeping more so a one eye on baseball. A lot of folks are until we get to the postseason. I think a lot of people, Harrison, we're going to get to Hoover. People are going to be like, Kentucky's what seed again? What's their record? I still think people are just kind of sleeping on Kentucky, and it's do it at your own peril again. And I mean, Nick Mangione's done a fantastic job. This is a super regional team last year, and I mean they deserve all the hype and the praise, man. Kentucky is
I mean, and their lineup's good. I mean, it's not like these big names, like Tommy Tanks, Cannon People. It's not these big names. It's Ryan Nicholson, 3 for 3 with a home run, 3 RBIs game 1. I mean, had another home run game 2. I mean, Nolan McCarthy, home run in game 2. I mean, Dominic Neiman on the mound. I mean, shoving. One of the best transfers coming in the SEC, and under the radar transfers coming from Central Connecticut State. And just South Carolina was looking at trying to get him to come to South Carolina too. So, I mean, keep that in your back pocket for thoughts. I mean, they have a lot of talent. They had 6 home runs in game 2 against, we talk about not the best Auburn team. I mean, they're 3rd in the SEC in home runs, Chris. 3rd in the SEC. Would you have believed that coming the season that they'd be 3rd at this point?
There's many things respectfully with Kentucky I would not have believed coming into the year. Like, I just put it that way. So, yeah, and they're 3rd in ERA, 3.65 ERA too, right ahead of Tennessee. So
they give up only just over 4 runs per game on the pitching side. I mean, if you did in the SEC, you're going to win a lot of ball games. A lot of ball games. You spoke on South Carolina. Let's talk about them. The Gamecocks went down to Gainesville and beat the Florida Gators, best 2 of 3, winning game 1, 7-6, game 2, 9-8, losing game 3, 11-9. This is a Florida team again. We just talked about LSU hitting the panic button. Florida, same way, Harrison. They are 7-8 in conference, so it's not quite as dire as what LSU has. My friend, they are 18-17 overall. Like, that is – I'm looking at this number. I'm like, this has to be wrong, right? But they have been that bad in the midweek. And you put here in the notes, let's also note, they went to Missouri last week. They got swept by the Tigers. They then go in the midweek. They get blasted by Florida State yet again, right? Ruled them in the midweek. And so what we joked about a few weeks ago, Harrison, it's this funny thing Florida does. They lose in the midweek and then they win on the weekends. Well, I'll tell you, Harrison, when you're not winning on the weekends, losing in the midweek becomes that much more frustrating. And they got their shit kicked in by Florida State. And then you lose 2 of 3 to a South Carolina team that is struggling in their own right? They struggled the weekend prior. This was one Florida desperately needed. Give credit to Mark Kingston's club, but we'll start with Florida, man. Man, like, I'll ask you this, like, who do you have more faith in to get it going and turning around, LSU or Florida? Because both in their own way are in dire straits. Yeah, Chris, and that I was going to pose that question to you as well, which I will after I answer yours. I mean, I got to say Florida, just because we've seen them do it. We've seen them do it early in the season. They did it against A&M. They did it at LSU. I mean, that's more so head-to-head for me on the road. I mean, I think that's just you got to lean Florida for me. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, who if one team has to make the postseason, Florida or LSU, who do you think makes it?
I would go Florida as well. I mean, number one, they're so much further ahead of LSU right now, right? I mean, listen, as bad as things have been for Florida, they're still 7-8 in the conference, right? I mean, they're still kind of floating around 500. I mean, LSU is 3-12 right now, so things are really off the rails. And to your point, I mean, again, we haven't seen LSU do it at all this year. They haven't beaten anybody. Like, they haven't been impressive at all. At least Florida. I mean, heck, they took down Texas A&M best 2 of 3 early on. So I mean, I would put more stock in Florida, but I tell you what, this was an ugly series loss. It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, give credit to South Carolina, which again we're going to, but on your home field, you got a struggling Gamecocks team. The pitching was not all that great, right? Again, you lose, and a couple of really close ball games, by the way, 7-6, 9-8 in games 1 and 2. Heck, 11-9 in game 3. So I mean, on one hand, you could say, hey, Florida could have swept. You could say Florida easily could have took 2 or 3. They also could have gotten swept, right? So I mean, I don't know if you can really go that far, but it's pitching is the issue, man. I mean, a bullpen game in game 2 for Florida. Jack. Here's my question, Harrison: are we getting closer to Jack Caglione getting bumped up in the rotation?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, the Sunday. I mean, he's such a consistently.
They're automatic on Sunday when he pitches. They're automatic.
Like, yeah, I mean, Florida had a bullpen game on Tuesday. 5 guys threw. No one. I mean, Liam Peterson, I think, threw the most at 2.2 innings pitched. But I mean, like I told you early in the season, I think he has to pitch on Sunday, just because if he pitches Saturday, he is going to be depleted on Sunday. You kind of save him that way. He kind of has rest. He kind of has time to rest throughout the midweek, and you get him at 100% Friday, 100% Saturday, and everything he's got left in the tank on Sunday on both sides of the ball. I mean, he gives you a chance every single Sunday. I don't think you can mess up. You can't change anything. I mean, like they say, like Crash Davis said in bullpen, or like in Bull Durham, you don't mess with a win streak. You don't mess with someone when they're hitting well and they're playing well. He's doing it on both sides of the ball.
And Harrison on the South Carolina side, this is the same song and dance under Mark Kingston we've seen for years. And I don't really say that disrespectfully. I also don't say that giving credit, though. I just say that to say that. Like, it is what it is, right? I mean, South Carolina, they are right at 8-7. They are one weekend the worst team in college baseball. The next weekend, they look like they could win the SEC. And that's just who they are and who they've been under Mark Kingston. I said it weeks ago, Harrison. They're going to win 34 to 36 regular season games. They are sitting right now at 25-11. They're going to go 15-15 or 14-16 or 16-14, right at that in the league. They're at 8-7. They are what they are, right? And that's not to say the biggest thing with South Carolina, if you're a Gamecock fan, you just hope they're peaking at the right time. This was a big series win, by the way. Let's call it for what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On the road, RPI increase, yes, huge.
As tough as the schedule gets, you take the momentum from this one. You get Arkansas at home. You get Kentucky at home. You go to Missouri. All of a sudden, Harrison, South Carolina could be a team that finds themselves getting hot. You never know. You never know, right? Like Arkansas and Kentucky are going to be really, really tough. But I think anybody in Gamecock Nation would take splitting those two series and don't get swept in either one of them. I think you can start to build some momentum if you're South Carolina. But it's just – it's the same song and dance, man. It's the same thing we've seen under Mark Kingston. And this is kind of a conversation for another day. But, I guess if that's good enough for Gamecocks baseball, if that's what it's become, so be it. But – they are what they are, which is a Mark Kingston ball club, and it shows.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, and the pitching was great this weekend for them. I mean, Eli Jones, I wrote about him my article about midseason rankings, one of the top 10 pitchers in the SEC, I believe, and he's just really, really stepped up. I think he's a little underrated, underappreciated, especially in the Friday night role. Getting overshadowed by Hagen Smith, Luke Holman, those esque guys, but to go 6 innings. 5 hits, 1 earned versus a really good Florida lineup that we've talked about and has a lot of power up and down it. It was he shoved and set the tone for the series. I mean, Chris Veach closed it out as well. 2-inning save, no hits. I mean, just the pitching was great. Ty Good finally got a start in moving from the rotation or from the bullpen to the starting rotation. And I talked about it. I said it needs to happen, and I predicted it would, and it did. I mean, he was a starter at College Charleston before transferring to Carolina. He was a good starter there. He went 4 innings, 4 hits, 3 earned. Gives you a chance to win the game you have Roman Kimbrell come out of the bullpen. I mean, I think he pitched really well, and I think you're going to see him get another start. But on the Florida side of pitching, they give up the 3rd most home runs in the conference at 49 home runs. That's huge. I mean, let's say at least 1 RBI, let's say 1.7 RBIs per home run. That's a lot of runs. It's a lot of runs in the SEC, and that's not going to help you win ball games.
And Harrison, before we get off this series, going back to the South Carolina side of things, you look at what this ball club is right now. They rank, 11th in the SEC in batting average, hitting .272, so nothing spectacular. They're right there in the middle of the pack with pitching, a 4.34 ERA. Like, what do you make of this club? Do they have this untapped potential that maybe they haven't reached yet to be a team that could make a run at Omaha, or do you just kind of view them as they're going to be a middle of the pack team all year long, and that's just who they are, and they're probably going to be a 2 seed somewhere, and maybe they make a super, maybe they don't, but that's sort of their ceiling. Like it kind of feels like the floor I don't think is astronomically low, but the ceiling's not all that high either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely a middle of the pack, but I don't want to say middle of the pack. I want to say high floor, lower ceiling, if that makes any sense. I mean, I feel like it's like we talked about, you have a very good top 5 Vanderbilt team coming in hot, red hot into Founders Park, your home field, and you sweep them. And then, you go on the road at Alabama, you drop a series, but you salvage 1 game. It's one of those kind of seasons. And we talk about it. That's the kind of Mark Kingston style of season and career tenure at South Carolina. It's just their identity year after year, but they're a tough team. It's just a tough team that grinds out series and grinds out games, and is all their games, I feel like, are 1 or 2 run games. They're all 7-5, 5-2, 5-3, 5-2, 6-3, and like you said, a lot of their games could be won or all lost. You could sweep or get swept, and it's just one of those high floor, low ceiling teams, I think, and could peak at the right time, could not. I mean, but no one knows.
I think Harrison, to that point, getting off of this, but last thing on South Carolina, I think South Carolina is one of those teams. It's important for everyone but especially for the Gamecocks, who they get paired up with, who they get matched up with, that's going to dictate a lot of how far they go in the postseason. Like, they need some favorable matchups, bottom line, right? Like, you look at last year's regional, as good as Campbell was, I mean, I think that was a pretty damn favorable regional. Like, the fact they were still hosting after imploding the last month of the year, and then you look at the teams they played, it was a lot more favorable than some others. So, like, matchups are going to be key for them. We'll see how it plays out. It's kind of luck of the draw, but there's potential there. But I think they need some help. I think they need some help. So,
RPI ranking wise, they're 15th in the country. But you know who's number one and whose regional they might end up in? That team upstate. They just might end up in that regional. When you think about it,
wouldn't that be something? Indeed.
I mean, they could even end up in a North Carolina regional.
Yeah, East Carolina very well could happen. That could very well happen. So we've seen them go there before. All right, let's talk the Egg Bowl on the Diamond. I couldn't believe this, Harrison. It had been almost a decade since this happened, but Ole Miss has finally won a series over the Mississippi State Bulldogs. First time since 2015. The Rebels get it done at Swayze. Cal Stevens was fantastic in game one, 8 innings pitched, 3 hits, no runs, 9 Ks in that game. Is the Purdue transfer, obviously. Some crazy baseball played in this game. We had an extra inning game, arguably the best rivalry in college baseball delivered over the weekend. Your thoughts, Harrison, on Ole Miss finally snapping this streak, which I didn't realize it was that one-sided. I mean, it's crazy to think about, but Ole Miss finally getting it done on the home field.
Yeah, I mean, to do it on the home field, I mean, is great, but it is – if you would have told people that coming to the series, I don't think they would have really believed you without looking at the numbers in the history of it. But I mean, outside of last year, I mean, both teams had bad years. Ole Miss, I think, has had Mississippi State's had 2 bad years. But it's just, this is an insanely competitive series. Maybe you could say we talked about one of the best rivalries in college baseball, and to have this happen, to also get a wild extra inning game in game 2, in which Mississippi State catcher Johnny Long gets ejected yet again in the weekend, but this time not for an aggressive tag and knees to the chest. He gets ejected for a 12th inning home run he hits, carrying the bat almost to first base and flipping it. And I mean, not even flipping it, launching it in the air before stepping on first base. I mean, this is what you want out of rivalry baseball, and it delivered, I'd say, this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about best rivalries in college baseball. Would you go as far to say this is the best one? It's tough, but I tell you what, it's right there.
It's top 3 for me. It's top 3 for me. All time, no, but recent history, I think you can say yes.
What's your all-time best college baseball rivalry?
Clemson, South Carolina. And just like Clemson, South Carolina's here, Florida, Miami here, Ole Miss, Mississippi State here. It's like really close. It's not like here. It's really close.
On a side note, shame we're not getting game 3 of Georgia Tech or South Carolina Clemson.
Very, very
big L. Big L.
What is your ranking then? What are your top 3?
I would probably go South Carolina Clemson number 1 as well. I think the history in Omaha really just that separates it from the others. I'd probably go Mississippi State, Ole Miss number 2. I don't know what 3. Florida, Miami's a good one up there. Tennessee,
Vandy, LSU, I think Mississippi State.
Yeah, that one they'll let you know that's a rivalry too. Tennessee, Vandy's a fun recent one. There's probably some others though that aren't East Coast that I'm not thinking about, but those are the ones that jump out the most. Finally, from over the weekend, Harrison, let's dive into this one. The Georgia Bulldogs take care of business against Missouri. They win 2 of 3, final scores of 15-10, lose 6-5 in 10 innings in game 2, but then bounce back, win game 3, 10-7. Your thoughts on Georgia protecting the home field? And, man, Charlie Condon, he's named the player of the week by somebody yet again. This dude is having an insane season.
Yeah, I mean, it's at this point, I'm not a betting man on college baseball, but do you bet on him still to win the Golden Spikes? I mean,
I think he's got to be the front. He's got to be.
He's got to be the front runner. But I mean, he's just unreal. He leads the nation in just. I don't want every category you want to think of. I mean, he's hitting.
Harrison. He's hitting 482.
I see 500. I saw 500 earlier.
Okay. Well,
I saw 500.
I'm looking at the SEC stats on ESPN, and this says 36 games played. I think This is correct.
Okay.
Either way,
That's
he's
okay.
hitting either 500 or damn near at
His
500.
slugging
So
is
he's
over
slugging
1,000.
over 1,000. Yeah.
His OPS is 1.7.
You know what's crazy about it too? He's drawn, I believe, more walks. I think that he's second in walks. I see somebody with 34 here, but he's doing 32 walks. So like he's not like one of these like all or nothing guys. Like he's got plate discipline. He's got power with 24, I think it is, home runs. I see. Yep, 24 home runs, and he's hitting damn near 500. I mean,
Yeah, he's top
the
3 in
dude is a
RBIs too. I
machine.
mean, it's
Yeah, he's a
unreal.
machine, dude.
And to think he
So
was a walk-on. I
only
believe
struck out 25 times. Only struck
Yeah.
out 25 times.
Yeah, I believe he was a preferred walk-on, and then he redshirts his freshman year, and then just, I mean, I think that was the best thing for him, to be honest with you. And then he's a Team USA guy, which I want to mention. Golden Spikes Award is presented by Team USA Baseball, and traditionally, if you look at it, it has gone to a USA Baseball alumni. So, I mean, Jack Caglione is a USA Baseball alumni as well. So don't forget about that. Ray McGunn, another USA Baseball guy. I mean,
yeah, very good point. Very good point. Harrison, we sit at the halfway point of SEC play. What's your biggest surprise at this point?
Biggest surprise, LSU baseball. Just the falling off a cliff that this season has really turned into this season. I mean, obviously a different team. We lost a lot of leadership, who lost just the 2 best players in college baseball, award-wise, draft-wise, just full profile-wise. And we saw it with Mississippi State. We saw it with Ole Miss, and now it's LSU. And it's just, I think it's bad for baseball. Good LSU, top-ranked LSU team is good for college baseball. And we don't have that right now. And it's a massive surprise, I think, to everybody. What is yours?
Harrison, I'm going to go. My biggest surprise has got to be Kentucky. I mean, being 14-1 in conference. What Nick Mingione has done, that nobody could have predicted. I mean, I thought they'd be a nice surprise, but 14-1 at the halfway point, never saw that. My other big surprise, Harrison, I think I'm going to say is we've got Kentucky, who's been dominant at 14-1. We've got Arkansas at 12-3, A&M 11-4. Tennessee's 10-5. Outside of that, like, this league has beat the hell out of each other. Like, there's so many 8-7s and 7-8s and 6-9s. Like, there are some really ugly conference records out there. Like, there's some really good teams that are holding on to some really ugly conference records. Like, this even goes beyond Florida and LSU. Like, it's just crazy to me, like, how this league right now, I mean, it's so good, it's so deep, but it's these teams are just beating up on each other, man. So, I mean, I think there's going to be a number of 13-17 or 14-16 teams that are realistically vying for, like, hey, we should be in the postseason. 1,000%. 1,000%.
Yeah.
Because the league is so difficult. So
we talk about it like halfway. Like I mentioned, I don't think preseason rankings are great. I usually wait till about SEC play starts, because you get a feel for the teams, who the players are, who the studs are, who's really, coming to the season hot and dominated. But I think more so, and I mentioned it, you have to wait till week 3 of the SEC, and then teams kind of separate themselves. I mean, the SEC is a gauntlet. We talk about that all the time, and I think we have to continue preaching it until it's just ingrained in everyone's minds. But there's always 2 or 3 teams, usually 2 in the SEC, that kind of raise their level of play and just above the bar than everyone else in the SEC. But this year, it's 4 top 4 teams are all SEC teams. It just shows how deep it is, but how a little bit different it is this year. Just more elite teams and players in the SEC. And I think the SEC is stacked throughout, but there's going to be a lot of 3-seed SEC teams in the postseason that are going to be really, really tough teams that you don't want to see, especially like an LSU or Florida.
Harrison, in closing, let's look at the latest D1 baseball top 25. And again, we mentioned some of these rankings. Texas A&M takes over at the number 1 spot. Arkansas, number 2. Kentucky, number 3. And the Tennessee Volunteers, number 4. The top 4 teams in college baseball are from the SEC. Outside of that, you got the Vanderbilt Commodores, who are sitting at 13th, even after getting swept. Alabama at 18 after their big series win over Arkansas. South Carolina is at 20. And how about them Georgia Bulldogs at number 24? Your thoughts on the latest D1 baseball top 25? Do you agree, disagree? Overall thoughts on the top 25?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's really accurate. I mean, you have a lot of data to use now, and a lot of just. I don't think there's too many overreactions or underreactions. I think Kentucky at 3, maybe a little bit of a stretch, and I think that's some fuel to the fire for Tennessee, who they play this week. So I think Tennessee's gonna be really amped up for that series and want to jump back in the top 3 and prove
Where is that, Harrison? If you don't mind telling me, where is that series at?
that I believe it's at Kentucky.
Here,
It's
I've
at
got the
Kentucky.
schedule.
It's at
I've got the
Kentucky.
schedule
So
pulled up now. Um,
yeah, I mean,
let's see.
maybe Vanderbilt
Yeah.
dropped a little bit more.
You know what's funny about that? Nobody's going to be picking Kentucky this weekend. Nobody's going to pick Kentucky.
I mean, hell, wait till I do some research. I might.
I'm just saying, just from the standpoint of like looking at it on paper.
Hey, when in doubt, pick the home team in the SEC. You do it half the time, anyways. I mean,
I wonder what that environment will be like. I do wonder what that environment will be like. We don't think of Kentucky and we think of hostile home baseball environment. I gotta think,
Kentucky
man.
Proud Park.
Yeah, Kentucky Proud Park. You gotta think. You got to think they're going to show up and show out. So
I'm curious to see how much orange is there.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Very good point.
So
I kind of echo what you said, Harrison. I think actually D1 Baseball is doing a pretty good job with the top 25. Vandy at 13. I'm still very skeptical of Vanderbilt, admittedly. Outside of that, though, I mean, it's crazy to see Kentucky at 3, but you got to give them credit, man. They've earned it. They've earned that. I wonder if there's an overreaction to Kentucky if they lose 2 of 3 or get swept. I just wonder, does Kentucky fall faster than maybe others would because they're Kentucky? And that's not fair, but you're kidding yourself if you don't think there's not like a –
I mean, it's similar to Florida State. They weren't ranked really well, and then they just jumped. They weren't even ranked, and then they jumped up in the rankings to like 13, and then like top 10. It's like, I don't know, those little things are what I don't like about how rankings are done. Some of the rankings are done, but other than that, they've done a really good job.
Well, Harrison, that's going to do it all for us, my friend. Any last words before we get out of here?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're a little over halfway, and Kentucky's a baseball school. Sorry.
Kentucky is a baseball school. Very well said.
Until Kentucky basketball proves it otherwise. So
I love it. Guys, that's going to do all for us. He's Harrison Fant. I'm Chris Phillips. Again, like I mentioned, be sure you hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon as well so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content. Also, guys, check out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We're also all across social media and our website, SECUnfiltered.com as well. And, oh, by the way, be sure to head over to our friends over at RHOBACK.com. Use promo code SECU at checkout to get 20% off your first purchase. Harrison was at the Masters. I was at the Masters. RHOBACK was everywhere, especially their Azalea collection, guys, which is out for a limited time. So, again, go check them out. Polos, quarter zips, hoodies, pants, shorts, you name it, they got it. RHOBACK.com, promo code SECU at checkout to get 20% off your entire first purchase. Guys, until next week, he's Harrison Fant. I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll catch you on the other side.